All right, y'all. Looks like we're live in both windows. The stream may or may not be long. It depends on if we pick up a crowd. I know I already streamed today, so it could be that my notifications don't notify as much as we would like. You guys know if I got the hood on and the third eye glasses that you're in for it tonight, though, right? Anyways, so yeah, we are still in money raising mode, and I am going to sit here and stream tonight for your edification and amusement as long as I can handle it. My jaw's got some strings in it, and the gums are all sewed up and stuff, so it's a little bit awkward to talk, but I think we're good. I was going to play music tonight, but I don't think I have energy for that. I'm still a little bit shell-shocked from getting my face yanked off and sewed up yesterday, so reading Kenneth Grant, personal thoughts. My personal thoughts are that I should read Kenneth Grant. I've been meaning to get around to that for years. Danny Carey from Tool actually says that Kenneth Grant he reads that rather than Crowley, and he considers it like an evolutionary step ahead of him. Something that I actually discovered, I think, yeah, swag. Just a couple nights ago, I read this when I was a teenager, but I'd forgotten about it. Transcendental Magic by Eliphas Levi is available as a. Should we watch that actually together, and I can do commentary on it? Maybe. Man, we really got nobody in the. I don't believe these numbers sometimes, because I can see people making comments, and it says there are zero people in the gallery. I don't buy it. How are they? Oh, it says no data, too. I wonder if that's true. Well, whatever, guys. We're not going to worry about it, I guess. That's weird, though. Why does it say no data? Give me a second to see. I mean, I can see it says it's live. I don't understand. Anyways, Eliphas Levi's Transcendental Magic. Eliphas Levi, for those of you who don't know, is the gentleman who gave us the popular image of Baphomet. You guys know who Baphomet is. A lot of people say Baphomet, but the T at the end of a word in French is silent, so it's Baphomet. Anyways, some interesting stuff about that. Baphomet well, it's not backwards. How do I explain this? There is a how do you say this? When the letters are scrambled and there's a code to read it, cipher. There's a cipher, and I think it's the last letter. Or the second to last letter is extracted, and then I don't know. I could pull it up somewhere, but it's a cipher. And Baphomet was actually encoding the word Sophia, which is wisdom, in the cipher. Anyways, Eliphas Levi is the guy that drew the image, and also Aleister Crowley claimed to be a reincarnation of him. And honestly, after revisiting that book the other day, I think it's some of the best evidence of reincarnation I've ever seen in my life, because his mind and his writing style and everything, it would be so difficult for Crowley to have inculcated that to the extent that he is, that it's that similar. I mean, it's really, if you're really familiar with Crowley's writing, why do people keep bailing out of the vertical? Is it messed up? Man, I did get messages from Streamlabs saying that something was wrong, and I hate that. Somebody, if anybody is in the chat, let me know in the vertical. Let me know that you're there and that the audio is good and everything. But besides that, it is like the best explanation of initiation, what it's like to be an initiate, the most in-depth explanation of Hermes. Honestly, if I had known about this, if I had remembered, I couldn't have remembered. I don't think I had the capacity to understand it when I read it when I was 15, you know. But I was just going to say that instead of doing the Corpus Hermeticum, I probably would have just done this section on Hermes, because it's just immaculate. The guy is absolutely mind-blowing. So if you're asking me about Kenneth Grant, I would suggest the Eliphas Levi book. Not only that, but it is available. I don't know if I said this already. Militarized astrology. I have no idea what that is. Yeah, I know you guys are here in the horizontal. It was the vertical that I was concerned about. But anyways, it's a 10-hour book. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. I'm thinking maybe that's what we'll do tonight is go through some of that. And the thing is, I know I was just skipping through it, so I don't know where these particular segments that I found are. But they were tremendously insightful and just diggity dope all the way around. So, by the way, you guys, every single time I do one of these political streams like I did earlier today, you know, talking about Elon Musk, Donald Trump, all this kind of stuff, I lose subscribers, I lose patrons. So whenever you see those, you know, to consider supporting the channel because I feel like I'm making a sacrifice in order to you know, say something that needs to be said. And in the case of this whole situation in the United States, you know, people are always asking me, like, what can we do, though? And I tell you guys all the time, that's what my whole channel is about. I mean, what I think we can do. And that is support people that are out there trying to do something about it. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, know what I mean? Do shit yourself, you know, but self-improvement is really the main thing, you know, elevating our consciousness, expanding our mind, and setting an example with our works. Your success, your proof is your success. Your proof is your success. Your proof is your success. And no set of talents and virtues is, or excuse me, one more time. The most complete set of talents and virtues is wholly useless in the absence of willpower and discipline, right? So, you know, that's really the mission for all of us, is to take our efforts at self-improvement and self-realization to levels that we didn't think that we could achieve, you know, on a consistent basis, pushing ourselves daily. You know, I'm almost 46 years old, and I have embarked on a quest to understand equations by, you know, not conceptually, but literally, like to be able to read, you know, formulas and understand what I'm looking at least to a fairly reasonable extent. Although I did get kind of bitch slapped a little bit the other day in regards to that, and this is another good example. You can't let it stop you. It was quite a wake up call. But I saw a video that was like geometry is entropy, and I thought that's interesting because order arises from chaos. We know this, but that's not what entropy tells us. And you know, if you look into it, you'll find that entropy sometimes generates complex symmetrical you know, order, but it's like an exception to the rule. Everything contains this contradiction. It's going to happen somewhere. But this was another perspective on it, and I clicked on the video, and it was a half an hour of just solid equations, and I was really like, holy shit, look, maybe I've bitten off more than I can chew with this whole trying to become advanced at, you know, mathematics at 45, but fuck that, you know what I mean? I'm still going to push myself to do it because I need to understand these things, you know? And I think also it's critical for people that have this sort of paradigm shifting predisposition, you know, that ascribe to this emerging, or should I say emergent ontological model that people like Michael Levin and Stuart Hameroff and Roger Penrose and whatnot are all substantiating right now. You know, as many of us as possible need to be the opposite of a muddle-headed mystic, you know. We need to not be the flaky new age housewife with 50 cats that believes, you know, that she's talking to aliens and yet hasn't produced one scrap of anything that isn't already in all the books that are behind her on her bookshelf while she's talking on TikTok. You know, like we need to not be those people. And unfortunately, I mean, fortunately, really, you know, your attitude towards work is the major impediment. The only thing in your way is you, you know. And what I realized is that if I look at this stuff like, you know, trying to understand the mathematical description of a fractal instead of just looking at a fractal, there's no difference. The engagement with the mathematics is just as interesting and exhilarating as looking at a fractal, you know, and a real one, a living fractal. And if you can make that shift in perspective, then all of the stuff that we kind of view as tedious, boring work is actually an exciting adventure. So probably not exactly what you're expecting to hear about mathematics coming from a guy with 3 eyeballed glasses on at 11:30 at night. But it should be what you expect to hear from someone that looks like that, in my opinion. Did I say I was going to look up this Eliphas Levi? Also, I'll just keep checking in with the chat. If you guys have subjects or comments, the Historia de la Magia. Oh no, he was French. That was the wrong accent. My bad. That's the other book, though, The History of Magic. And this guy was a legit initiate. So when he talks about the history of magic in the terms of Western occultism and Pythagoras and Empedocles and where all this stuff came from, the whole lineage and everything, it's probably correct. Also, Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma has a lot of surprises for people that are interested in the transmission of these lineages. Surprising little insights into history, like the mysteries being outlawed in Egypt and the reasons for it, and then the outlawing of them in Rome and the consequences of that, and also the transmission of the lineage from there underground, the names of the groups and how they became who and what. I read a lot of it on my Knights Templar stream directly from that book a little while back. A little while ago. Oh, and look at that. It's episode 111 of whatever. Oh, so that's nice. It looks like there's one where they've broken it up so it's not just 10 hours, because this one is just 10 hours. There's actually several of them where people have read the entire thing. That might be a bit much. I don't know. We could do it. I mean, we can't do all 10 hours tonight, but we could probably get into it. Let's see if there's any questions or subjects suggested. I want to be a fractal. You already are a fractal. And that is a really important sort of revelation. What is going on with the vertical tonight? This whole thing of fractalization, right? I was kind of meditating on this a little while ago, and the universe a little while ago. A little while ago is a small animal from Texas, I guess, because, I'll be talking to people from Texas, and they'll say a little while ago, and I just assume it's something like an armadillo, a little while ago. But anyways, a little while ago, I was meditating on this, and I saw this, not quite like a sphere, but it was like a convergence of all of these different, the same algorithm, and it was moving at different speeds and copying itself at different speeds, so it had different trajectory and different dimensions, sort of, or maybe just different juxtapositions and whatnot. And it was nearly infinite, but it was all the same algorithm, intersecting in all these different ways. And one of the things that I understood is that part of the observer effect and the reason for it and why we perceive this infinite multitude of, the 10,000 things, it has to do with actually the algorithm appears different from your one of those vectors, one of those algorithmic vectors interpreting this thing. So, I mentioned this earlier, also a great example of this, and also the only explanation for James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake is the Baron Trump weirdness, this book where he is the last president and his mentor's name is Don, and the Trump Palace is at the same address as the Trump Hotel, and their Secretary of Defense is named Pence, and all of this, all kinds of other stuff. There's a lot of weird Alice in Wonderland coincidences, synchronicities as well, and they get even weirder when you realize that for a while Elon Musk had a white rabbit and it said follow. It was like his follow button was the white rabbit, And then Trump had, he was giving a talk on a balcony, and there was a white rabbit next to him for some reason. Stuff like that. These higher orders of symmetry, this algorithmic nature of reality, could actually kind of explain how this kind of stuff happens, because it's really just one pattern that is sort of bouncing off and intersecting with itself at an infinite number of angles and trajectories and whatnot. And so, we get these instances of this kind of thing. It doesn't really even, that kind of explanation doesn't negate the prophetical element of it. It just explains how it happens, because everything in this universe has a mechanism of action, and that's kind of what I'm primarily interested in, is understanding these things and their mechanisms. So, and then also, if you're interested in more of the details of how it is that the universe could be holographic, and the best scientific evidence for that is probably black holes and what happens with energy at their event horizons. So I'm not going to try to explain that, but if you're interested in that subject, then you can research that and you will find out. In fact, maybe we could pull up a video and check it out. Let me see if do we have an audience tonight? Yeah, okay, we do. Planetary mantra and their relation to planetary intelligence. I don't know a tremendous amount about that, but I can say something of value, I think. The universal mind expresses all sorts of allegories and secrets in plain sight, right? And so the sixth planet, Saturn, has a hexagram on it. And Saturn is associated with Satan, and the six-pointed star can fit in that hexagram pretty well, and it's also kind of regarded as Chronos, time. But what does time do? It ravages and destroys, annihilates everything. And so the sixth planet from the sun has a hexagram-shaped storm on the top. People write this off as like a coincidence, but it's not. It's evidence of the underlying structure of the universe. It's evidence of a universal mind. It's evidence of some sort of teleology in nature. And it's also something that we have called the book of the allegories of nature in, the Western mysteries since at least Hermes. That's the real goal of the initiate or the shaman in the jungle. And the shaman in the jungle, it's a little bit different. You're learning, it includes these things actually, so it's not different. But the practical day-to-day application of it has more to do with identifying plants to cure snake bites and stuff. But the snakes that look like, or the plants that cure snake bite, often the Dos Equis cure, for example. It's actually on my channel somewhere. I found one in the jungle, and the bark looks just like Dos Equis skin, and the leaves look like drooping snake heads, and so on and so forth. Sangre de Drago helps the blood to heal wounds, and it looks like blood when you cut the tree, and so you have this kind of interface. That's what shamanic sight really is. And so the number 6 and the hexagon and all of these things speak about the nature of the relationships, really, more than they do about, in my opinion at least, Saturn exerting some kind of influence over earthly people. Another great example is Venus. Venus actually draws a pentagram in the sky every 8 years, and then Mercury and the nature of Mercury and the concept of Mercury. These things are really about what lies behind the archetypes that they're connected to and the deeper essence of their symbolic expressions, So Mercury, closest planet to the sun is the alchemical gold. You knock a proton off of Mercury, it's gold. So, those are the kind of things when you talk about planetary mantras and intelligence, it's kind of how I think about it. That they're more like signposts or sign symbols, hints, clues, or writings on the wall. The rest is up to you, kind of thing. Interestingly, when you start to find a lead on one of these signposts, right? You pick something up. If you pursue it further, you'll generally start to find other weird stuff that is surprising. And one of those things is that, like, mercury, the metal, is used as a well, they made a sort of moat around the sarcophagi of it's not the Aztecs, but it's an offshoot of the Aztecs. Like, after maybe the Aztec Empire fell, they splintered into different groups, and one of those groups, they put these moats of mercury around their sarcophagi, and so did the Egyptians in some cases. And so the purpose of these in both cultures was to transmit the dead across to the other realm. And then, of course, Mercury, the entity in both the Egyptian and the Greek cosmologies, is a psychopomp that ferries people off to the land of the dead. And so you have this weird connection, because Mercury, the metal, was not called Mercury in the Nahuatl, in the Aztec language, or the Egyptian language, or, you know, it and the association with the metal was not, you know, part of the Greek cosmology, or, you know, it was not part of the allegorical system of Mercury. In fact, I don't know how Mercury the metal got its name. I should look that up. But point being, there's something deeper that connects all of these things and concepts. And as, you know, an initiate or a magician, that's what you're looking for, is to find the correspondences. That's why we have gematria, and we have books like 777, which Crowley actually supposedly, what is it called when you copy someone? Plagiarized from Mathers. And it's just a book of all these correspondences. And in a practical sense, one of the things that these correspondences allows you to do, speaking of the intelligence of these planets, and this brings us full circle back to your original question, is that once you know what these correspondences are, you can sort of use them to self-engineer, to metaprogram yourself to come into alignment with the intelligences and the processes that are represented by these symbols in the universe. You know, so a great example of that is the assumption of God forms. If you are wishing to assume the personage of Osiris, then you want solar colors, you want hymn to Ra playing, you want incense that is, you know, citrus and other solar associated smells and images, and you know what I mean? You surround yourself with these things. But on a mental level, to become even better at it, you would know all of these other numerical associations and all of these sort of allegorical connections. This is one of the reasons that real initiates tend to be such bookworms. You know, you always think of wizards with these big books and you assume they're full of spells, but they're not. They're full of all kinds of information about chemistry and philosophy and you know, everything under the sun, because that's how you're going to weave your knowledge together and make investitures of this kind of vision. Questions and subjects still welcome. Okay, there we go. We got a couple of people in the vertical. So should we get into this Eliphas Levi thing? Or shouldn't we? I also saw something interesting. Some physicist claiming that he has found some sort of absolute proof of consciousness as a fundamental aspect of the universe, but I think we know that at this point. Uh-oh. 1 hour ago. All right, I got something for you. Let me put on my screen sharing and let's have a look at this. Yeah, all right. So I got to put on my screen. Got to get myself out of the way to... It's not letting me manipulate my stuff. bit smaller though. Get up out of here. And then see if I can do it for the. Man, I always have this trouble with the. Is that it? Yep, got it. All right, we're good. Everywhere, I think. Oh man, the screen sharing thing is so small for the vertical. Sorry about that, you guys. I just can't really do anything about that. It's just how it is. How it gotta be. How was that? It's a bit silly, right? Okay. Screen. I think I'm gonna put her. I disappeared. Well, I don't need to be there. All right. So what I found just now is Michael Levin talking about immortality, and I guess it only dropped an hour ago. So
based theories that just over time, something, it might be the genome, it might be something else, over time something accumulates errors, and that it's basically it's an external source of aging, if you will. It happens because there's damage that accumulates over time. We've been driven by some wild results in modeling of goal-directed morphogenetic systems. We've been driven to a different idea. So I'll bounce this off of you and see what you think of this. This idea that what we see in our computational model is that when you have a system where a bunch of competent subunits, cells, are bound towards implementing a particular goal. So there are stress-based mechanisms that keep them towards a particular goal. Once they've accomplished that goal, which is to build the correct morphogenesis of the body, then they sort of hang around for a while and everything is fine. But then eventually it starts to degrade, and it starts to degrade for no external reason. There is no damage. We've not introduced any, progressive decay of, thermodynamic, whatever. There isn't any of that. It starts to decay for what looks to me, and this is early days, I don't know, but what looks to me like a very psychological reason. It's a goal-directed system that has reached its goal and now doesn't know what to do anymore. And it starts to dissociate. There is no new goal. It's already done the thing it was supposed to do. And it's very weird that in a system like that, it doesn't just stabilize. It sits there for a little bit, but then eventually it just starts to degrade. And so to me, that I mean, I like dissolving all kinds of distinctions for sure, but to me, it seems it's critical to how we think about interventions. This idea that is aging because external errors in the hardware accumulate, or that no, actually, even in the absence of anything wrong with being in the hardware, you're going to have a fundamentally psychological reason for this. Yeah, and in this case, psychological, not of the brain of the creature, of the somatic intelligence, right?
So I should inject there. I should have done it right away, but he says something about response-driven morphogenetic changes. And what he means is that we have, and I've been talking about this a lot lately, but super, super important in terms of accumulating evidence of a universal mind. And this may be the most undeniable thing, because I'm going to use the tree specifically. I wish I could remember which tree it is, but there's a tree in Africa that has devolved something that has been getting it cut down to the point where it's on the brink of extinction. And so there's no way the tree could know what it is that it's getting cut down over. Elephants are also not growing tusks, and rattlesnakes are not growing rattles anymore. So, the fact that this organism cannot possibly know what it is that's getting it in trouble suggests that there is some sort of what did he just call it? He had a good word for it. Let's see if I can just
this. Yeah, and in this case, psychological, not of the brain of the creature, of the somatic intelligence, right?
Yeah, somatic intelligence. There you go. That's a good one. So anyways, yeah, so that's kind of what he's talking about, that that we've noticed that, and he just kind of glossed right over it. But I mean, it's an incredibly huge thing, and of course, biologists are falling all over themselves trying to figure out how to explain it without invoking, God or a universal mind or something. But it basically, choked out neo-Darwinism like on the spot, like dead on the mat. And if you put that together with all the other stuff that's been emerging all over science for the last year or so, you can understand why there's some terrified overlords. Another thing I wanted to mention is that this idea of immortality sounds real good until you think it through. For one thing, I don't know that we need to subvert processes like that. Even like, let's say that vaccination is in the best interest of all of humanity. Let's play devil's advocate and just say that, right? Keeping a bunch of people that nature would normally kill in the gene pool is not a good idea. And it blew my mind how much hate I got for saying that during the thingamaputter, in 2020, because it's just obviously true, And then if you go to a Walmart or place where people that are very within the matrix frequent, you see that you got people that can't walk a lot. They're rolling around and they're 700 pounds and they have to drive a thing around just to go grocery shopping, and and they're on tremendous amounts of pharmaceuticals. And my opinion is that pretty much every opinion in the matrix is generated. It's all a product of social engineering. And so, keeping people half alive in a more or less vegetative state, and so that they can be pumped full of pharmaceuticals and profited on until, they finally give out, that's not what we need to be doing. And if we're all one eternal consciousness anyways, what is the point in that? What is the point in prolonging suffering? What is the point? I've never even understood why people cling to life so much. Like, oh, I want to be 100 years old. Why? I mean, maybe it helps that I think that I'm part of a consciousness that will never die. So I'm like, I'm past my prime. If I didn't have a kid right now, I'd be fine with checking out. You know what I mean? Give me a new meat suit. Let me take another shot, see if I can maybe do a little bit better this time, stay more focused. You know what I mean? I don't get it at all. I really don't. Unless, I guess, you think this is your one life. Point being, the whole immortality thing, it's coming, whether we like it or not, whether it's a good idea or not. And, I think that really helps us to understand a lot of the other stuff we're seeing in the world right now. If we get ourselves in the middle of another world war, if there's another pandemic, if, this kind of thing is the reason why. So as much as I like Michael Levin and the work that he's doing, I don't know what he's thinking about that, and I haven't seen anyone ask him, which is bothersome.
It's a kind of existential boredom of the somatic intelligence, if you will, and so that led me to some weird thoughts, and I wonder what you think about this. If you can imagine a sort of and I don't know if I can't recall if we've already talked about this, but a sort of Judeo-Christian notion of heaven, right? You sort of show up, everything is great, and it's going to be great, for an infinite amount of time. Now the question is, right? You've got a snake, you've got your pet dog, and you. My intuition tells me the snake is going to be completely fine ad infinitum, maybe. The dog, probably, if the conditions are very good, every day is like every other day. I'm not sure if the dog's going to have any problems right? And so in this environment, we've done away with brain degeneration. We've done away with aging of the physical. There's no physical aging. Now, what happens to the human, right? I don't know. We could keep ourselves busy for the first 10,000 years. But what happens a billion years in? Do you think it's possible to stay sane for extremely long periods of time with no organic damage, just by virtue of I don't know, some sort of psychological need for further change? What do you think about that? Is that?
I'll answer, Mr. Levin, Mr. Dr. Levin. Let me check in with the chat and make sure that my audio is working and everything, because sometimes I put stuff on and people are like, "Oh, there's no volume." Single celled. Okay, it looks like we have audio. So What I was going to say is, yes, I do think that we can stay sane, and here's why. If you achieve any degree of illumination, the first thing that occurs to you is that our job is to experience and learn. That's it. There's no other point to this. We are the rovers. We are the sensory organs of the universe, and everything is, but at different levels. And the whole point of it is for everything to experience, for the universe to experience everything it can from every possible point of view. And that includes from the point of view of a rock, a microbe, a fucking, what are those things that are like DNA, bacteria, mitochondria, whatever, And so a little while back, I was looking at the Dirac equation and like, what is the probability that there are alien races that have had technology for 10,000 years or more? And so I had AI do the computation, and on the low end, it's 150 or 300 million. This is in the entire universe, I think. Not in the galaxy, but no, 300 billion on the low end and 300 trillion, 150 billion on the low end, sorry, and 300 trillion on the high end. And so if you reason in that we have achieved teleportation of information, which is just the step away from teleporting people or objects, and no, it wouldn't kill you, by the way, because entanglement, it works on entanglement, so it's instant. There's no disruption of anything. You would be, instantaneously, literally instantaneously, using entanglement quantum processes. So no risk of death as long as you're reconfigured correctly. And then, so we've had computer technology for what, 75 years, 150 years at the most, depending on how you define a computer, I guess. And then also, immortality is on the table. He's talking about 10 years at the most. And this isn't the only person working on this, and we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. So factor in all that, 75 years, 150 years, 10,000 years, like 300 trillion tops, let's cut it in half and call it 150 trillion. There's some immortal teleporting beings, lots of them. We're not talking about individuals when I say 150 trillion. We're talking about civilizations, right? So entire planets full of, and who knows how big some of those planets might be, 10 times the size of Earth, 100 times the size of Earth, half the size of Earth, some of them. It's, pretty crazy. So my point is that with all of this, if you know that your job is just to go around the universe learning and seeing stuff, how the hell are you going to get bored? If I woke up every day feeling like I was 30 years old, 25 even, whatever, max possible health, and you have limitless options and you're made of light basically, and it, and you can go anywhere and do anything forever. What do you mean? How are you going to stay sane? What is he talking about? That's my point of view.
Is that anything?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I personally think that you couldn't, and you wouldn't want to. So from a purely mathematical perspective, what you're talking about is oscillator death. So attaining your steady state, your goal, and staying there, this is exactly equilibrium physics death. And you become a closed system, and you lose that which is characteristic of biological self-organization. You could actually say any kind of interesting non-equilibrium or out of equilibrium or far from equilibrium dynamics. So to stay in one place violates the kind of solenoidal dynamics or Red Queen dynamics that is definitional of life. So I don't think you can elude death. Death is just part of a life cycle. It's part of this solenoidal dynamics. It's part of this itinerant attractor manifold. that defines the self-organization in open systems that we've been talking about. So I would actually contend that all the snake and the dog and you and I would not survive terribly long, even in heaven, in the same form. And if we did, we would technically be, we would no longer be sort of, well, of course, we wouldn't be living because we would be dead, but we certainly wouldn't have the dynamical itinerancy, and the normal laws of physics would not apply, nor would the way that certainly I understand self-organization as a constructive way of existing and living in a world to which you are open. So as soon as you're open as a system, and you have a steady state. In other words, you have characteristic states that define you as you and me as me. You necessarily have to have these solenoidal dynamics, which means that your attracting set is of the kind you have to keep moving, much like a shark or much like Red Queen dynamics. Clearly, because it's an attracting set, you will revisit characteristic states of the neighborhood periodically. And by you, I now mean that, it could be a species or have a life cycle, or it could be, the dendritic component of a cell. It could be a gamma oscillation, electrochemical oscillation. But at every level, you've always got to keep moving.
Settle down, homeboy. I don't know who that guy is, but I'm going to find out because he's a straight gangster. But what he's talking about in human language almost is, like I was thinking about the problem that I've had with my jaw. Basically, my jawbone was too narrow, and so my teeth were all crunched together. And my mom was of a disposition that she would, upgrade her house before she would get her kids braces. You know what I mean? So I think I went to a dentist once in my life. And so the problem that it causes is, among other things, it's periodontal. And what basically a long, chain of personal stuff that I probably have already said too much about. But the point is that form and function have a symmetry, right? So they tell you not to judge a book by its cover because it's not polite, but it's not true. It's true in a very, very basic way. Like, someone's not necessarily a convict because they have tattoos, generalizations about black people, women, white males, whatever. They don't obviously apply uniformly to all of these things, but at the same time, form and function have symmetry, right? You look at the male genitalia relative to the behavior and the general definition of masculinity, and there is a symmetry between the form and the function, So who I am is expressed in my physical form, and so this narrow jaw may have had, you can interpret that in allegorical ways that are probably true. I did some thinking about it today. I don't really feel like talking about it, but you know what I mean? Like I could understand how this allegory makes sense. So assuming reincarnation is true, or even the quantum loop theory of the universe, where the universe collapses and then it regenerates, but a little bit different, tiny bit, but, somewhat. And so you accrue experience and knowledge, and you change based on your environment. And so one of the reasons for death is not only, as he was saying, to reset, because we would go insane just living forever, according to him. I don't know if I agree. But that's part of it, that our physical form is no longer exactly consistent with the being that we become as we accrue this information that changes the semantic intelligence of our system, right? So basically you outgrow your mortal coil eventually, and it will not really serve your function. Also, there's other things that he was alluding to, like the evolutionary process. You cannot just step out of these processes. It's not intended to be that way. They cannot be circumvented. And one of the problems that he's making is he's thinking from a philosophical point of view, these things shouldn't be possible. And he's saying, I don't think you can do it. You can't avoid death. But you can't use philosophy to argue against bioelectric fields and morphogenetic realities that Michael Levin is causing in his laboratory for good or ill, you know. So he's older, and he's kind of looking at this and going like, no, this can't be real. But I think that's partly just because he's older and he's not able to process what's happening, you know. And I don't blame him to an extent. But anyways, that's what he is correct fundamentally in theory. I don't know if he's correct in practice, however. Let me check in with the chat again. Entropy contravenes the steady state and randomness of enthalpy. I'm not sure I know what that is. Make sure you talk about the cerebrospinal fluid and Inanna showing the 7 chakra being open, so death and rebirth happens daily. Claro. I mean, that's not necessarily my area of expertise, but I mean, I'm sure I can say something about it. Why are there deleted messages? What kind of trouble has this person been in here starting? Let's see. You are appreciated. I appreciate you as well, and we also appreciate it when you show appreciation by subscribing. Join the Patreon, where you get access to tons, 6 years of material that is not public, and we're demonetized, so it helps. You can also send Bitcoin and whatnot via the address in the. You guys hearing the static? It's driving me insane. I don't know what it is. It's like, bitch, stop. Oh, wow, that was weird. All right, looks like I need a new jack. That's what I'm thinking. That would explain why my mixes aren't very good. I'm only getting one side or the other, and one's very faint, so I didn't notice. Yep. See, one step closer to better musical mixes. Okay, so what was I saying? You one-time options to support in the chat. I think maybe the coca tea did help perk me up a little bit. So let's keep going with these eggheads.
Simply because you've got this solenoidal aspect to non-equilibria or dynamics of open systems. This is also mathematically called detailed balance. So if you have detailed balance, you're dead. And that's the situation where you have this equivalence between forward and time reversal dynamics. So it doesn't matter whether you go backwards or forwards in time, that you look the same. So that's being dead. And that's exactly not changing. So, I think there's a mathematical reason why one should not try and elude death. Death is just part of the natural cycle. If you were able to immortalize one in the sense that you are no longer changing, I think that would be, from a mathematical perspective, a certain kind of death.
Very interesting. So we are in therapeutic terms, we're then focusing our attention on renewing. Clearly you cannot stay the same. The question is, what can you renew to give a new sense of purpose to the somatic system? And that this point is what we're going to try for.
Well, normally you and me, things like you and me have children.
So would you consider that to be a changing form of yourself? So earlier you said you cannot last forever in the same form, which implies that maybe you can in a changing form. Now, it's difficult for me to think of a snake or dog, and especially us, that stays the same. We're constantly changing even throughout this conversation. So is there a way, Carl, that we can live forever in a changing form in such a manner that you do have a continuous self? Because you can change so much that you're no longer the same self a minute from now.
He is Indian, I believe, so I don't know why he's asking this question. This is a reincarnation in a nutshell. This is the reason for metempsychosis. This is, and I'm sure he's aware of that. I'm kind of, trolling him a little bit in a friendly fashion. Friendly fire. But still, obviously that's what is meant here. Also, this thing about children, becoming a father changed me in some ways. Like, I didn't party as much afterwards, but aside from that, not. I mean, it was not like there was like me before child and me after. I essentially am the same. I really do think that the continuous exploration of, or the aggregation of accumulation of knowledge and experience is that flow factor, that keeps us in a state of evolution. Just as he was saying, we've changed throughout this conversation. I don't see why the interaction with the universe is not enough.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking that, or thinking about that when Mike was talking about this sort of selfhood that makes sense of the deep past and the deep future. Um, you know, part of my self-modeling, and I identify as a human. And of course, if I identify as a human, then my selfhood could actually be transgenerational. And on that view, at that particular scale, yes, you can live forever if your conspecifics procreate in the right kind of way. So from a purely sort of maths perspective, this is the cycle of reproduction, say for sexual reproduction creatures, is just another expression of one of these solenoidal dynamics in open systems. And it's a particularly long one, but it's a necessary feature of any pullback attractor or attracting manifold that defines the self-information that we were talking about before. So into that self-information is just a probability you're close to or on that manifold that contains these itinerant trajectories at every scale. And of course, that also means that there's always a scale higher. So there will be cyclical motions of the heavenly bodies that are necessary to actually have a yearly cycle of climate, that are necessary to have a diurnal cycle of day and night, that have that contain my sleep-wake cycle, that contain right the way down to respiration, right the way down to fast oscillations of our dendrite in our favorite cell in the hippocampus. All of these contextualize each other, but the one recurrent theme is this revisiting states that I was once in, simply because if my attracting set, or the set of states that characterize me or my niche's niche, was not attracting, then I would just exponentially diverge and dissipate. And of course, that would not be self-organization.
To stay informed in an ever-evolving land.
I don't feel like he really got into what I was hoping. I already know that he feels like immortality is right around the corner. In fact, I even suspect that they have already achieved this and they're just being quiet about it because, yikes. And of course, it would only be available to the very wealthy at first. Anyways, and if anyone can correct me on this, tell me that I'm wrong, please do. But it seems to me that Willow, the quantum AI, well, let's see. Have I just missed something? What else has it told us? How long has this been now? 2 months or something? Willow AI news. Two months ago, 4 hours ago. But it doesn't look like it has anything about Willow, just Gemini, DeepSeek. Nope. Oh, they shut it down? Is that what they're saying? Yeah. So it looks like I'm correct that we were told about this quantum chip, and then that it contacted parallel universes, and then they just went quiet about it. And I'm very, very suspicious of that. I feel like if the common person was given access to that level of information, it would upset the order of society to the point where, there would be no need for overlords at all. all of the questions of government. I mean, think about the obsolescence of government all of a sudden. You know, if you have access to this unbiased superintelligence that can analyze every trend and all of the influencing, you know, elements, every relevant constituent, the answers are not even that difficult. You know, most of the reason humanity is lost is because of deliberate, intentional social engineering, misdirection, wedge issue manufacturing, and implementation. You know what I mean? They're toast. They're done. Their game is over. There's no need for them. And that's one of the reasons they're focusing their attention so concisely on the more ignorant, you know. Sorry if you're a Trump supporter, but I spend some time searching through comments, and, you know, when you see people defending Elon Musk and Donald Trump, things are spelled wrong, grammar's fucked, the syntax is, you know what I mean? Like, it's all bad. There's a reason why they're focusing on that demographic, because those are the people whose attention they can still hold. Those are the people that they're going to be able to mesmerize and hypnotize, who will not correctly organize and get with their soldiers and give them a surprise. Can you feel the vibe? Yeah. So anyways, let me check back in with the chat. I don't know if I should put my screen sharing away or not yet, but let me see what we got going on up in here. All right, the numbers are growing. We're getting bigger. That one's shrinking though. What do you guys think? What's next? Let's check out the Eliphas Levi. I wish I could just find the part that I was listening to the other day, because it was so good. I should have checked the minute marker, but it was late at night and I just wasn't really thinking about it. By the way, for you guys that are patrons, we are having our Discord meeting tomorrow at 4:00, I think I said. Shit. Here's the 10-hour book. Yeah. All right, let's see what we got.
Practiced upon earth are a source of increased rage and apparently of increased power. At the epochs when saints and angels work miracles openly,
Hold up.
consciences which, according to Christian doctrine, shall be opened at the last day is no other than the astral light, which
Damn, man. Yeah, this is
astral fluid, and can be evoked and reproduced according to the will of the sage, as we shall see when treating of second sight and the evocation.
Sorry, guys.
Central point of the junction.
I gotta try to. Hey, is that ayahuasca? What the hell is that doing just randomly on this? Ayahuasca, those are chaliponga leaves, I think, which is interesting because that's the Ecuadorian chacruna. And then, of course, that's a... those could be ayahuasca leaves. I'm not really 100% there, but I think they're chaliponga, which is also called... oh, wait, is that nutmeg in the front, too? Man, you better not mix those things, bud. I hope that's just a cute picture there, not somebody's plans for the afternoon. Okay, so, man.
And by the equilibrium of the Golden Mountain, which gods on the one side and demons on the other encircle with the symbolic circle and vital force. Be it so. I allow you to secretly that, apart from his very premature and over-generous dreams about the emancipation of women, this celebrated, learned, illuminated man could not have been so mad as is pretended by those who have not read him. We have sketched rapidly the history of occult philosophy. We have indicated its sources and analyzed in a few words its chief memorials. The present division of our work refers only to the science, but magic, or rather magical power, comprehends two things, a science and a force. Without the force, the science is nothing, or rather, it is a danger. To give knowledge to power alone found in...
guys, let's go to the beginning and just start from the beginning. It was already giving me a lot to think about. And I noticed there's actually images of psychedelics all throughout the... Like, that's what the background images are. And that actually makes perfect sense. A lot of people don't realize that Hermeticism and the Western occult tradition are really shamanic tradition, a very sophisticated shamanic tradition. And the kykeon, the drink that was consumed by the apoptye, the inner circle of the original Illuminati, really, I think was acacia and Syrian rue. A lot of people think that the LSD guy, what was his name? Albert Hoffman. Albert Hoffman's theory of a ergot beer is correct, and he did brew it successfully. The thing is, experimenting with ergot would have killed a lot of people, and it would have been a horrible death. So I doubt it, really. And these plants grow in all of the places where the mysteries hailed from. So at any rate, let's see what's up with this book. What's going on? Have we been denied?
Introduction. Behind the veil of all the hieratic and mystical allegories of ancient doctrines, behind the darkness and strange ordeals of all initiations, in the ruins of Nineveh or Thebes, on the crumbling stones of old temples, and on the blackened visage of the Assyrian or Egyptian Sphinx, in the monstrous or marvelous paintings which interpret to the faithful of India the inspired pages of the Vedas, in the cryptic emblems of our old books on alchemy, in the ceremonies practiced at reception by all secret societies, there are found indications of a doctrine which is everywhere the same and everywhere carefully concealed. Occult philosophy seems to have been the nurse or godmother of all intellectual forces.
Okay, so already there's a lot to unpack. Like, this idea of a universal truth, or the perennial philosophy, as Aldous Huxley put it. The depth of that and the concision of the protocols and whatnot. Secret, sacred, the etymology, or the phonetic connection is not a coincidence. Neither is magician and musician. You'll be hard pressed to find any shaman that does not use songs to manipulate energy. You will also not find any ceremonial protocol that I'm aware of, at least, that does not involve the casting of a circle or defining of a circle, and then the acknowledgement of four directions in some shape or form. And there are a number of other consistencies all throughout. In really ancient times, you had a recognition of the sun as a source of life and our consciousness and our soul, S-O-L, add you, and it becomes the individual soul. And so this universality is much deeper than when we think of various religions and their connections, and the fact that the love your brother, love your neighbor as you would yourself is this fundamental golden message. But beyond that, we have in ancient cultures throughout the world profound similarities that are very specific. And this extends also to entities and deities. And then, we have magical practices that to the modern materialist mind may seem a bit ridiculous. However, how iggity ever, if you consider, for example, entanglement, right? Your consciousness is entangled with particles in someone else's, say, tooth. And this idea of manipulating or harming a person by being in possession of some part of their body. These particles in your tooth that this person has come to possess are entangled with the rest of your body, and their brain is entangled with the things in the tooth to a lesser degree. But the idea that you could exert influence through a hair or some other article of clothing, even, but a body part would be probably much more efficacious. These things are not really in conflict with science at this point, and they were pretty ubiquitous beliefs throughout the ancient world of shamanism, that you had better keep your fingernail clippings together if you have any enemies. this sort of thing.
The key of all divine obscurities, and the absolute queen of society in those ages when it was reserved exclusively for the education of priests and of kings.
And that is where things kind of went awry, right? So in Egypt, originally, Ankh and Khonsu, the priest of the beast, these initiatory processes were for the pharaohs. But at some point, there was some sort of dissemination of lineage of initiatory privilege to more common people. And this led to the persecution and attempts at eliminating the mysteries and snuffing out illumination. A couple of points that I missed. He mentioned how occult sciences were the progenitors of all of the other sort of intellectual disciplines. And for sure, alchemy led to Sir Isaac Newton's discovery of light being able to be broken up into lesser constituents, and a great many other things. It's absolutely true that the occult sciences are sort of what prompted these deeper investigations, and we have regarded them as primitive forms of scientific investigation for far too long, because it turns out, as we're increasingly discovering, it seems with each passing week, that these more subtle levels of interpretation and understanding of, or even application of cosmic principles, has actually retarded our scientific progress and our understanding of the universe probably by hundreds of years. There's been all sorts of unnecessary expenditures of energy and time and money because we have disregarded certain essential aspects of occult knowledge. And many of these things were disregarded just because they were guilty by association, not because they were actually unprovable, and it does serve our purposes to some extent to say we need things to be provable in the sense that E equals MC square is demonstrably true. When you say everything contains its contradiction, this stuff is, obviously true to common sense and observation, but it's much more difficult to format it mathematically. Of course, that's increasingly untrue, and we see the balance of antinomies throughout the universe, but still, it's not quantifiable, What I'm getting at there is that the sort of reintegration or addressing this issue, or the place that science has arrived at this particular moment, it represents a sort of convergence or reemergence of a better way to put it actually is that the connective tissue that these occult premises that have been swept under the rug represent is a more subtle and elusive layer of physics and biology and neuroscience. And so we are finally at the place where we're able to draw these connections and sort of suture the schisms in our knowledge that were created by this sort of ontological prejudice.
It reigned in Persia with the Magi, who perished in the end, as perish all masters of the world because they abused their power. It endowed India with the most wonderful traditions, and with it an incredible wealth of poesy, grace, and terror in its emblems. It civilized Greece to the music of the lyre of Orpheus. It concealed the principles of all sciences, all progress of the human mind, in the daring calculations of Pythagoras. Fable abounded in its miracles, and history, attempting to estimate this unknown power, became confused with fable. It undermined or consolidated empires by its oracles, caused tyrants to tremble on their thrones, and governed all minds, either by curiosity or by fear. For this science, said the crowd, there is nothing impossible. It commands the elements, knows the language of the stars, and directs the planetary courses. When it speaks, the moon falls blood red from heaven. The dead rise in their graves and mutter ominous words as the night.
Hold on, guys. Hold on just a second. We got to look at the publication date of this book because I'm pretty sure it was a pretty long time ago. Eliphas, and it sounds like he's anticipating a lot of things in science that hadn't actually happened yet. Let's see. (1854).
Night wind blows through their skulls. Mistress of love or of hate, occult science can dispense paradise or hell at its pleasure to human hearts. It disposes of all forms and confers beauty or ugliness. With the wand of Circe, it changes men into brutes and animals alternately into men. It disposes even of life and death, can confer wealth on its adepts by the transmutation of metals and immortality by its quintessence or elixir, compounded of gold and light.
Well, there you go. I've been looking for the mathematical substrate where the universal mind, how would you say, wherein these allegories are sort of formalized, I guess. The connection between light and gold is recognized, and it's starting to be studied by science. And the connection between stars and gold is well known, obviously light and gold, and there are connections in our brains to these things, right? The role of light is starting to be understood in consciousness and cognition, and gold as well, the role that it plays in our minds. So that was really interesting to hear him basically speak of the quintessence as golden light. And another interesting thing about that is that you are what you eat, right? So if there is a natural fountain of youth, a source of eternal life, the only thing that we know of in the physical universe that is actually suspected to be eternal is light. And so, and then gold as an allegory or a physical manifestation that is sort of a cousin or something. It's really difficult to figure out how to talk. I got to get better about talking about, figuring out how to articulate this stuff. But it doesn't corrode, it has these properties of light, of agelessness, and changelessness, because light travels at the speed of light, and there's no change or time at the speed of light. So, gosh, this is going to be really good, you guys. I'm probably going to have to do a series on this. I feel a little bit weird though, like using someone else's reading of it. Maybe I should find a PDF and we should just. It's so long though compared to the last with the Hermes thing, but it's probably really worth it because I can do a really good job of updating a lot of the things that are being said. So maybe we'll do the introduction tonight, and then I'll start a series of doing commentary on the Transcendental Magic book by Eliphas Levi.
Such was magic from Zoroaster to Manes, from Orpheus to Apollonius of Tyana. When positive Christianity, victorious at length over the brilliant dreams and titanic aspirations of the Alexandrian school, dared to launch its anathemas publicly against this philosophy, and thus forced it to become more occult and mysterious than ever. Moreover, strange and alarming rumors began to circulate concerning initiates or adepts. They were surrounded everywhere by an ominous influence, and they destroyed or distracted those who allowed themselves to be beguiled by their honeyed eloquence or by the sorcery of their learning. The women whom they loved became striges, and their children vanished at nocturnal meetings, while men whispered shudderingly and in secret of blood-stained orgies and abominable banquets. Bones had been found in the crypts of ancient temples, shrieks had been heard in the night, harvests withered and herds sickened when the magician passed by. Diseases which defied medical skill appeared at times in the world, and always, it was said, beneath the envenomed glance of the adepts. At length, a universal cry of execration went up against magic. The mere name became a crime, and the common hatred was formulated in this sentence. Magicians to the flames, as it was shouted some centuries earlier, to the lions with the Christians. Now the multitude never conspires except against real powers. It does not know what is true, but it has the instinct of what is strong. It remained for the 18th century to deride both Christians and magic, while infatuated with the disquisitions of Rousseau and the illusions of Cagliostro. Science, notwithstanding, is at the basis of magic, as at the root of Christianity there is love. And in the gospel symbols we find the Word incarnate adored in his cradle by 3 magi, led thither by a star, the triad and the sign of the microcosm, and receiving their gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, a second mysterious triplicity, under which emblem the highest secrets of the Kabbalah are allegorically contained.
Now, real quick, let's diverge from this for a second so I can kind of shed some extra light on this idea of the Trinity, this triplicate pattern. Let's see. Triplet. By the way, what he was talking about, the demonization of the Illuminati, basically, throughout history, was to discourage the people from learning, from taking initiation, demonizing Hermes, right? He had horns and he was met at the crossroads and he was a god of music and magic. Sound familiar at all? Meeting the devil at the crossroads, selling your soul to get involved in music, and all this crap that kind of came out of this. And they actually stole a lot of the secrets through the archons that penetrated the mysteries in Rome and Greece in order to construct the Bible. So it's like they robbed him and then demonized him, which is cute, right? But yeah, that was the blackening of the name of magic and the illuminated and the political motivation for it. This is something that they've been doing for 2,000 years at least, and they created Christianity as an alternative to their alternative to this. So triplet. Well, let's see. Triple resonance pattern. Hammer off. I know I just saw something. This might do it.
Today's guest is Stuart Hammeroff, who, along with Roger Penrose, has a theory of
Oh
consciousness.
no, it's too
What's
long.
particularly interesting is that Roger Penrose is a rigorous physicist, bordering on mathematician, which means even
Here, I might be able
more
to,
rigor,
I might be able
and
to
generally
find this
speaking,
section.
those people tend to stay away from theories of consciousness that aren't simply emergent from material complexity. However, Hammeroff and Penrose have a theory that combines general relativity with quantum theory, and it's in fact in this unification that produces consciousness within what are called microtubules, though it doesn't necessarily need to be within there. This is a technical talk, and we didn't even get to half the questions. There's quite a bit of jargon, and that's because I believe that one needs to speak with a certain level of domain-specific language if one is going to make progress. Otherwise, we stay at the Jejun level. If you're merely listening to this rather than watching, such as on Spotify or iTunes, or you're away from the monitor, there are concomitant visuals in the YouTube video. For those unacquainted, the point of this channel is to interview those who have contributions to a theory of everything, and then for you and us to collectively, via Discord, via the subreddit, come to a greater understanding of the laws that govern us, and God and free will and so on. There is a clips channel called Toe Clippings with shorter, shareable...
I swear I just saw this today, you guys. Bear with me for a second. Let's see if I can find it. Well, fuck it. All right, we'll worry about this some other time. I mean, I just talked about it on the channel a little while back. But basically, one of the reasons I wanted to look for it, somebody asked something about being a fractal earlier. And These are basically triplet resonances that exist at every scale of resonance. So kilohertz, megahertz, hertz, whatever other scales there are. And at any rate, that's good enough for right now, I guess.
Christianity owes, therefore, no hatred to magic, but human ignorance has ever stood in fear of the unknown.
Actually, no, it's not good enough, because speaking of the fractal thing and as above, so below, musical structure, right? The chord 1, 3, 5. The 4 fundamental forces of physics are really 3. The 4th is kind of generated by the others. So you have 3 fundamental forces of physics, 4 if you include gravity, but that's really like the 7th in a chord. You don't really need it, and it's kind of just, an addendum or something. The elements, there were 3 in most primitive societies, because the 4th is a composite of the others, earth, and so on. So, you have this triplicate pattern in macro, micro, in vibrations and oscillations, and then in the structural resonances of the universe as well.
The science was driven into hiding to escape the impassioned assaults of blind desire. It clothed itself with new hieroglyphics, falsified its intentions, denied its hopes. Then it was that the jargon of alchemy was created, an impenetrable illusion for the vulgar in their greed of gold, a living language only for the true disciple of Hermes. Extraordinary fact. Among the sacred records of the Christians there are 2 texts which the infallible Church makes no claim to understand and has never attempted to expound. These are the prophecy of Ezekiel and the Apocalypse, 2 Kabbalistic keys reserved assuredly in heaven for the commentaries of Magi and Kings, books sealed as with 7 seals for faithful believers, yet perfectly plain to an initiated infidel of the occult sciences. There is also another work, but although it is popular in a sense and may be found everywhere, this is of all most occult and unknown, because it is the key of the rest. It is in public evidence without being known to the public. No one suspects its existence, and no one dreams of seeking it where it actually is. This book, which may be older than that of Enoch, has never been translated, but is still preserved unmutilated in primeval characters on detached leaves, like the tablets of the ancients. The fact has eluded notice, though a distinguished scholar has revealed, not indeed its secret, but its antiquity and singular preservation. Another scholar, but of a mind more fantastic than judicious, passed 30 years in the study of this masterpiece, and has merely suspected its plenary importance. It is, in truth, a monumental and extraordinary work, strong and simple as the architecture of the pyramids, and consequently enduring like those, a book which is the summary of all sciences, which can resolve all problems by its infinite combinations, which speaks by evoking thought, is the inspirer and moderator of all possible conceptions, and the masterpiece, perhaps, of the human mind. It is to be counted unquestionably among the very great gifts bequeathed to us by antiquity. It is a universal key, the name of which has been explained and comprehended only by the learned William Postel. It is a unique test, whereof the initial characters alone plunged into ecstasy the devout spirit of St. Martin, and might have restored reason to the sublime and unfortunate Swedenborg. We shall recur to this book later on, for its mathematical and precise explanation will be the complement and crown of our conscientious undertaking.
I wonder what the hell he's talking about. And another thing that I wanted to mention, he kind of just in passingly said, the Book of Revelations with its 7 seals, which is obvious, the real meaning of this to any initiate. The Bible's full of stuff like that, where if you're not an initiate, you're not going to notice it. And that was done for a number of reasons, mostly manipulative ones. People know what lies behind a lot of symbology and allegory without having to be explicitly told. But you can also imbue a, how would you say, a structure, I guess, with a sort of attractant force to give it greater power over the minds of man by using these very powerful symbols and allegories and sort of propping them up in a context that misconstrues them. So they still have this powerful force of attraction, but yet their true meaning and function is sort of misconstrued in this context, and that makes for a better trap for minds. So there's that.
The original alliance between Christianity and the science of the Magi, once demonstrated fully, will be a discovery of no second-rate importance, and we do not doubt that the serious study of magic and the Kabbalah will lead earnest minds to a reconciliation of science and dogma, of reason and faith, heretofore regarded as impossible. We have said that the Church, whose special office is the custody of the keys, does not pretend to possess those of the Apocalypse or of Ezekiel.
So apocalypse, by the way, means revelation. So when he says the keys of apocalypse, we're talking about the final revelation, in a sense. Also, I just felt compelled to point out that this book published in 1858 or whatever it was, there is no way in hell that he knew that matter is light in a standing wave. And Penrose only formulated his CCC theory in recent years. And the idea or the knowledge that particles collide with their antiparticle, leaving behind only protons, and so the matter is redintegrated back into the light. There's no way that was known to Eliphas Levi, but yet he knew that Kabbalah and science would lead to a reconciliation of mysticism and, as he said, faith and reason.
In the opinion of Christians, the scientific and magical clavicles of Solomon are lost, which, notwithstanding, it is certain that in the domain of intelligence ruled by the Word, nothing that has been written can perish. Whatsoever men cease to understand exists for them no longer, at least in the order of the Word, and it passes then into the domain of enigma and mystery. Furthermore, the antipathy and even open war of the official church against all that belongs to the realm of magic, which is a kind of personal and emancipated priesthood, is allied with necessary and even with inherent causes in the social and hierarchic constitution of Christian sacerdotalism. The Church ignores magic, for she must either ignore it or perish, as we shall prove later on. Yet she does not recognize the less that her mysterious founder was saluted in his cradle by 3 magi, that is to say, by the hieratic ambassadors of the 3 parts of the known world and the 3 analogical worlds of occult philosophy. In the school of Alexandria, magic and Christianity almost joined hands under the auspices of Ammonius Saccas and of Plato. The doctrine of Hermes is found almost in its entirety in the writings attributed to Dionysius the Areopagite. Synesius outlined the plan of a treatise on dreams, which was annotated subsequently by Cardon, and composed hymns that might have served for the liturgy of the Church of Swedenborg, could a Church of the Illuminated possess a liturgy. With this period of fiery abstractions and impassioned warfare of words, there must be connected also the philosophic reign of Julian, called the Apostate because in his youth he made unwilling profession of Christianity. Everyone is aware that Julian had the misfortune to be a hero out of season of Plutarch, and that he was, if one may say so, the Don Quixote of Roman chivalry. But what most people do not know is that he was one of the illuminated and an initiate of the First Order, that he believed in the unity of God and in the universal doctrine of the Trinity, that, in a word, he regretted nothing of the old world, but its magnificent symbols and its too gracious images. Julian was not a pagan. He was a Gnostic, allured by the allegories of Greek polytheism, who had the misfortune to find the name of Jesus Christ less sonorous than that of Orpheus. The emperor paid in his person for the academical tastes of the philosopher and rhetorician, and alter affording himself the spectacle and satisfaction of expiring like Epaminondas with the periods of Cato. He had in public opinion by this time fully Christianized, but anathemas for his funeral oration and a scornful epithet for his ultimate memorial. Let us pass over the petty minds and small matters of the Boss Empire and proceed to the Middle Ages. Stay, take this.
Yes, let's. Well, let me check in with the chat and see if people are with this. I would be if I was you guys, but who knows? Is he saying that there is an afterlife? Well, I assume you're talking about way back when we were still looking at Levin. Yeah, they are kind of saying that at this point. Basically, if there is an electromagnetic field where all memory is stored, and there's this sort of cognitive light cone thing where, there are systems that are thinking. It's not, when we think, we're not a thing thinking, we're a system thinking, we're a conglomerate of things that are processing information and experience, and even producing all sorts of different, results, like the interactions between our chemicals and bacteria and enzymes, and enzymes are chemicals, but you know what I mean. All of these things, all of these processes occurring, sort of generate this eye at the top of the pyramid. But yeah, so now that we know that for sure that cognition, at least, is not dependent upon neurons. And also, equally important, the observation that we can turn off consciousness by reversing the spin of electrons, and that, if it's one of the only times we've really been able to experiment directly with consciousness, because it's such an ephemeral thing, that you can't really pin down what it is, where is it, how do you know what I mean, like how do you quantify it, you can't even define it. But the fact that we know that you can turn it off at the quantum level, combined with that other information, then it's not saying there's an afterlife, but it's definitely suggesting that things like reincarnation and afterlife are no longer in conflict with science. I hope he doesn't keep going with this, he's like Cato fucked up by not subscribing to this, whatever he was, you know what I mean? And when this stuff is good, it's good, but just like Crowley has a tendency to kind of just too much.
This book. Glance at the 7th page, and then seat yourself on the mantle which I am spreading, and let each of us cover our eyes with one of its corners. Your head swims, does it not, and the earth seems to fly beneath your feet. Hold tightly and do not look right or left. The vertigo ceases. We are here. Stand up and open your eyes, but take care before all things to make no Christian sign and to pronounce no Christian words. We are in a landscape of Salvator Rosa, a troubled wilderness which seems resting after a storm. There's no moon in the sky, but you can distinguish little stars gleaming in the brushwood, and may hear about you the slow flight of great birds, which seem to whisper strange oracles as they pass. Let us approach silently that crossroad among the rocks. A harsh funereal trumpet winds suddenly, and black torches flare up on every side. A tumultuous throng is surging round a vacant throne. All watch and wait. Suddenly they cast themselves on the ground. A goat-headed prince bounds forward among them. He ascends the throne, turns, and assuming a stooping posture, presents to the assembly a human face, which everyone comes forward to salute and to kiss, their black taper in their hands. With a hoarse laugh he recovers an upright position, and then distributes gold, secret instructions, occult medicines, and poisons to his faithful bondsmen. Meanwhile, fires are lighted of fern and alder, piled up with human bones and the fat of executed criminals. Druidesses, crowned with wild parsley and vervain, immolate unbaptized children with golden knives and prepare horrible love feasts. Tables are spread, masked men seat themselves by half-nude females, and a bacchanalian orgy begins. There is nothing wanting but salt, the symbol of wisdom and immortality. Wine flows in streams, leaving stains like blood. Obscene advances and abandoned caresses begin. A little while, and the whole assembly is beside itself with drink and wantonness, with crimes and singing. They rise, a disordered throng, and form infernal dances. Then come all the legendary monsters, all phantoms of nightmare. Enormous toads play inverted flutes and thump with paws on flanks. Limping scarabaei mingle in the dance. Crabs play the castanets. Crocodiles beat time on their scales. Elephants and mammoths appear habited like cupids and footed in the ring. Finally, the giddy circles break up and scatter on all sides. Every yelling dancer drags away a disheveled female. Lamps and candles formed of human fat go out smoking in the darkness. Cries are heard here and there, mingled with peals of laughter, blasphemies and rattlings in the throat. Come, rouse yourself. Do not make the sign of the cross. See, I have brought you home. You are in your bed, not a little worn out, possibly a trifle shattered by your night's journey and its orgy, but you have beheld that of which everyone talks without knowledge. You have been initiated into secrets no less terrible than the grotto of Tryphonius. You have been present at the Sabbath. It remains for you now to preserve your wits, to have a wholesome dread of the law, and to keep at a respectful distance from the church and her faggots. Would you care, as a change, to behold something less fantastic, more real, and also more truly terrible? You shall assist at the execution of Jacques de Molay and his accomplices or his brethren in martyrdom. Be not misled, however. Confuse not the guilty and the innocent. Did the Templars really adore the Baphomet? Did they offer a shameful salutation to the buttocks of the goat of Mendes? What was actually this secret and potent association which imperiled both church and state, and was thus destroyed unheard? Judge nothing lightly. They are guilty of a great crime. They have exposed to profane eyes the sanctuary of antique initiation. They have gathered again and have shared the fruits of the tree of knowledge, so that they might become masters of the world. The judgment pronounced against them is higher and far older than the tribunal of pope or king. On that day that thou eatest...
In case you're not following this, man, there's a lot being alluded to here. There was a schism at some point between what we now call the white hats and the black hats, the brothers of the left-hand path, and the, oh man, sounds like turning the guitar on caused me some, let me see if I can fix this. Some glitching. Schism between the two sides of the lodge, or created two sides of the lodge, and it had a lot to do with the seeking of power and domination of the people. Oh, that's all fine. I don't know what happened. Just turn that off. Okay, there we go. Fixed it. Yeah, so, you know, when he's talking about the condemnation that would befall these people that are engaging in these crazy rites with the object of using this power to control the world, you know,
Eatest thereof, thou
that's what he's, you know, this whole big long description of all of it. That's what's going on.
shalt surely die, said God himself, as we read in the book of Genesis. What then is taking place in the world, and why do priests and potentates tremble? What secret power threatens tiaras and crowns? A few bedlamites are roaming from land to land, concealing, as they say, the philosophical stone under their ragged vesture. They can change earth into gold, and they are without food or lodging. Their brows are encircled by an aureole of glory and by a shadow of ignominy. One has discovered the universal science and goes vainly seeking death to escape the agonies of his triumph. He is the Majorcan Raymond Lully. Another heals imaginary diseases by fantastic remedies, belying beforehand that proverb which enforces the futility of a cautery on a wooden leg. He is the marvelous Paracelsus, always drunk and always lucid, like the heroes of Rabelais. Here is William Postal writing naively to the fathers of the Council of Trent.
The reason Paracelsus was always drunk and always lucid is probably, what is it called, that green stuff? Absinthe. It has a weird characteristic of, at least in my experience, was very little, but the brand was actually called Lucid that I drank. And I, realized at one point, and my girlfriend at the time noted this as well, that I was really drunk in a way, but also like crystal clear and lucid, and like it was almost scary, because there was a lot of ego leaking through because of the alcohol, but I was also concise and like seemed to have access to more of my mind. It's a really, really strange state of mind to be in, the absinthe, and I can see why it would be associated with magic, because it gives you that access to the subconscious and the sort of infernal lower realms, and intuition and whatnot, while at the same time somehow allowing you to maintain a greater level of conscious awareness and focus than you normally could if you had consumed spirits as such.
Proclaiming that he has discovered the absolute doctrine, hidden from the foundation of the world, and is longing to share it with them. The council heeds not the maniac, does not vouchsafe to condemn him, but proceeds to examine the grave questions of efficacious grace and sufficing grace. He whom we behold perishing poor and abandoned is Cornelius Agrippa, less of a magician than any, though the vulgar persist in regarding him as a more potent sorcerer than all, because he was sometimes a cynic and mystifier. What secret do these men bear with them to their tomb? Why are they wondered at without being understood? Why are they condemned unheard? Why are they initiates of those terrific secret sciences of which the church and society are afraid? Why are they acquainted with things of which others know nothing? Why do they conceal what all men burn to know? Why are they invested with a dread and unknown power? The occult sciences, magic. These words will reveal all and give food for further thought. De omni re scribili et quibusdum alice. But what, as a fact, was this magic? What was the power of these men who were at once so proud and so persecuted? If they were really strong, why did they not overcome their enemies? But if they were impotent and foolish, why did people honor them by fearing them? Does magic exist? Is there an occult knowledge which is in truth a power and works wonders comparable to the miracles of authorized religions? To these two palmary questions we make answer by an affirmation and a book.
Authorized religions. That's great. And one of the questions that I've posed, actually, I kind of I got a pretty shocked look from a shaman. He was telling me, my teacher actually, the reason I never say his name, he said I never want you to reveal who I am on the internet because it creates jealousy and there's black magic, and he told me all these stories about people cursing their neighbors' cows and all this stuff, and I was like, okay, so if this black magic from these shamans is so powerful, why didn't it stop the conquistadors and the Catholic Church? And what's that about exactly? I mean, you said your friend's neighbor could wipe out all of his cows, and he's a drunk. He's not even a powerful shaman. He could kill all these cows with his mind. So why couldn't the shamans and priests of the Inca stop the Catholic Church? And it's not the power of Christ. And I'm not really sure what the answer to that is exactly, except that I've never been much of a believer in that kind of magic, and also there is the other possibility that they were protected themselves by initiates of a much more sophisticated form of shamanism. But it is a fair question, and the one that he just posed.
The book shall justify the affirmation, and the affirmation is this: there was and there still is a potent and real magic, All that is said of it in legend is true after a certain manner, yet contrary to the common course of popular exaggeration, it falls below the truth. There is indeed a formidable secret, the revelation of which has once already transformed the world, as testified in Egyptian religious tradition, summarized symbolically by Moses at the beginning of Genesis. This secret constitutes the fatal science of good and evil, and the consequence of its revelation is death. Moses depicts it under the figure of a tree which stands in the midst of the terrestrial paradise, is in proximity to the tree of life, and is joined at the root thereto. At the foot of this tree is the source of the 4 mysterious rivers. It is guarded by the sword of fire and by the 4 symbolical forms of the biblical Sphinx, the cherubim of Ezekiel. Here I must pause, and I fear that already I have said too much. I testify and find that there is one sole, universal, and imperishable dogma, strong as supreme reason, simple like all that is great, intelligible like all that is universally and absolutely true, and this dogma is the parent of all others. There is also a science which confers on man powers apparently superhuman. They are enumerated thus in a Hebrew manuscript of the 16th century. Hereinafter follow the powers and privileges of him who holds in his right hand the clavicles of Solomon, and in his left the branch of the blossoming almond. Aleph. He beholds God face to face without dying, and converses familiarly with the 7 genii who command the entire celestial army. Beth. He is above all griefs and all fears. Gimel. He reigns with all heaven and is served by all hell. Daleth. He rules his own health and life and can influence equally those of others. He. He can neither be surprised by misfortune nor overwhelmed by death.
For those of you that are lost, he's going through the Hebrew alphabet, and these are associations other than the normal attributions of a number. Dalet is a door, Gimel is a camel. So these are another level of correspondence, I guess.
Disasters, nor can he be conquered by his enemies. Vow. He knows the reason of the past, present, and future. Zain. He possesses the secret of the resurrection of the dead and the key of immortality. Such are the 7 chief privileges, and those which rank next are these. Cheth. To find the philosophical stone. Teth. To possess the universal medicine. Iod. To know the laws of perpetual motion and to prove the quadrature of the circle. Kaf. To change into gold not only all metals but also the earth itself, and even the refuse of the earth. Lamed. To subdue the most ferocious animals and have power to pronounce those words which paralyze and charm serpents. Mem. To have the ars notoria which gives the universal science. Nun. To speak learnedly on all subjects without preparation and without study. These, finally, are the 7 least powers of the magus. Samek. To know at a glance the deep things of the souls of men and the mysteries of the hearts of women. Ayin. To force nature to make him free at his pleasure. Pe. To foresee all future events which do not depend on a superior free will or an undiscernible cause. Tsade. To give at once and to all the most efficacious consolations and the most wholesome counsels. Kof. To triumph over adversities. Resh. To conquer love and hate. Shin. To have the secret of wealth, to be always its master and never its slave, to enjoy even poverty and never become abject or miserable. Tau. Let us add to these 3 septenaries that the wise man rules the elements, stills tempests, cures the diseased by his touch, and raises the dead. But certain things have been sealed by Solomon with his triple seal. It is enough that the initiates know, as for others, whether they deride, doubt, or believe, whether they threaten or fear, what matters it to science or to us? Such actually are the issues of occult philosophy, and we are in a position to meet the charge of insanity or the suspicion of imposture when we affirm that these privileges are real. To demonstrate this is the sole end of our work on occult philosophy. The philosophical stone, the universal medicine, the transmutation of metals, the quadrature of the circle, and the secret of perpetual motion are neither mystifications of science nor dreams of delusion. They are terms which must be understood in their proper sense. They formulate the varied applications of one and the same secret, the several aspects of a single operation which is defined in a more comprehensive manner under the name of the great work. Furthermore, there exists in nature a force which is immeasurably more powerful than steam, and a single man who is able to adapt and direct it might change thereby the face of the whole world. This force was known to the ancients. It consists in a universal agent having equilibrium for its supreme law, while its direction is concerned immediately with the great arcanum of transcendental magic. By the direction of this agent, it is possible to modify the very order of the seasons, to produce at night the phenomena of day, to correspond instantaneously between one extremity of earth and the other, to see, like Apollonius, what is taking place on the other side of the world.
He's talking about entanglement right there, for one thing. Also, I wanted to mention that oftentimes when the word gold is used, the word light could be interchanged. And so the great work, in a sense, there are different levels, like microcosm, macrocosm, sort of concepts in relation to the great work. So there's the great work of the individual, and then there's the great work of the universe. Either way, it's this the transmutation of base material into the... Or a great way to put it is the lead of everyday experience into the gold of higher consciousness. But the universe is literally transmuting all of the matter into light as well. And so he referenced how, one of the goals of the great work is ultimately to turn the entire earth to gold, but you might more succinctly say light. There was something else that he made me think about, but anyway.
To heal or injure at a distance, to give speech a universal success and reverberation. This agent, which barely manifests under the uncertain methods of Mesmer's followers, is precisely that which the adepts of the Middle Ages denominated the first matter of the great work. The Gnostics represented it as the fiery body of the Holy Spirit. It was the object of adoration in the secret rites of the Sabbath and
the fiery body of the Holy Spirit is the electromagnetic field.
Temple, under the hieroglyphic figure of Baphomet or the androgyny of Mendes. All of this will be proved. Here, then, are the secrets of occult philosophy, and such is magic in history. Let us glance at it now as it appears in its books and its acts, in its initiations and its rites. The key of all magical allegories is found in the tablets which we have mentioned, and these tablets we regard as the work of Hermes. About this book, which may be called the keystone of the whole edifice of occult science, are grouped innumerable legends that are either its partial translation or its commentary reproduced perpetually under 1,000 varied forms. Sometimes the ingenious fables combine harmoniously into a great epic which characterizes an epoch, though how or why is not clear to the uninitiated. Thus, the fabulous history of the Golden Fleece resumes and also veils the hermetic and magical doctrines of Orpheus, and if we recur only to the mysterious poetry of Greece, it is because the sanctuaries of Egypt and India to some extent dismay us by their resources, leaving our choice embarrassed in the midst of such abundant wealth. We are eager, moreover, to reach the Thebaid at once, that dread synthesis of all doctrine, past, present, and future, that, so to speak, infinite fable which reaches, like the deity of Orpheus, to either end of the cycle of human life. Extraordinary fact! The 7 gates of Thebes, attacked and defended by 7 chiefs who have sworn upon the blood of victims, possess the same significance as the 7 seals of the sacred book, interpreted by 7 genii and assailed by a monster with 7 heads, after being opened by a lamb which liveth and was dead in the allegorical work of St. John. The mysterious origin of Oedipus, found hanging on the tree of Cithaeron like a bleeding fruit, recalls the symbols of Moses and the narratives of Genesis. He makes war upon his father, whom he slays without knowing. Tremendous prophecy of the blind emancipation of reason apart from science. Thereafter he meets with the Sphinx, that symbol of symbols, the eternal enigma of the vulgar, the granite pedestal of the sciences of the sages, the voracious and silent monster whose unchanging form expresses the one dogma of the great universal mystery. How is the tetrad changed into the duad and explained by the triad? In more common but more emblematic terms, what is that animal which in the morning has 4 feet, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? Philosophically speaking, how does the doctrine of elementary forces produce the dualism of Zoroaster? Well, it is summarized by the triad of Pythagoras and Plato. What is the ultimate reason of allegories and numbers, the final message of all symbolisms? Oedipus replies with a simple and terrible word which destroys the Sphinx and makes the diviner king of Thebes. The answer to the enigma is man. Unfortunate, he has seen too much, and yet through a clouded glass. A little while, and he will expiate his ominous and imperfect clairvoyance by a voluntary blindness, and then vanish in the midst of a storm like all civilizations, which, each in its own day, shall divine an answer to the riddle of the Sphinx without grasping its whole import and mystery.
Jeez. Oh, man. Yeah, man has seen too much, yet through a clouded glass, and soon he will vanish in a storm, having partially solved the riddle of the Sphinx. Damn, Eliphas. That's heavy duty shit. Check in with the chat, see if there's anybody still hanging in there with me. By the way, if you guys still have questions or subjects that you would like me to weigh in on, I'm still down for that. I just stumbled upon this, and it's just really good. I'm from Boston and one night in Cambridge in the late 90s. I had a feed times, and I agree. I unfortunately wasn't used. I'm not sure I follow. Alive to Thrive 2025. That's definitely what we're hoping. Sometimes, some days I feel barely alive, but I'm getting pieces putted back together. Still hanging in here with you. Yeah, man, this is good stuff. I realize there are moments where it drags. Look at what happened to my glasses. The intro was like 45 minutes long, so and I plan on doing a series on this now that I'm realizing more succinctly what it is. But I don't want to do it twice, so I'm thinking maybe we should even shift gears or just like randomly, let's see what's in the middle here.
Hierarchies. All this has been materialized and degraded into superstition by genethliacal soothsayers and directors of horoscopes during the decline in the Middle Ages. The restoration of astrology to its primitive purity would be, in a sense, the creation of an entirely new science. Our present concern is only to indicate its first principles with their more immediate and approximate consequences. We have said that the astral light receives and preserves the impressions of all visible things. It follows herefrom that the daily position of the heaven is reflected in this light, which, being the chief agent of life, operates the conception, gestation, and birth of children by a sequence of apparatuses designed naturally to this end.
Now, science has recently observed a light emitting from the egg at the moment of conception. They say it's a release of some kind of, the zinc-based shit that's going on. It doesn't matter. Light. And he just said that there's this light that regulates birth or, the inception of children. And then also, maybe I'm getting tired because my brain's not totally firing as well as it should. The astral light, he said, retains all information and impressions from everything physical, right? And I recently heard a physicist describing how, every single word that is printed on in a book, if you light it on fire, on some level, that information is retained, every single letter of the book. So it all really reminds me of what was his name? Some physicist that said the first sip of the natural sciences will make you an atheist, but at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you, kind of thing. That science has dedicated itself almost primarily to disproving all of this kind of stuff, and it has confused or confounded its map of mechanism of action with like a real explanation. None of it gives us a prima mobile. None of it gives us a the map is not the territory, I guess, is a good way to put it. And ironically, science is now validating all of these things that it has been looking down its nose at and scoffing at and even demonizing for hundreds, if not thousands of years now. It's a cute trick, isn't it? Everything comes full circle, and there's nothing anyone can do about it.
Now if this light be so prodigal of images as to impart the visible imprints of a maternal fantasy, or appetite to the fruit of pregnancy, still more will it transmit to the plastic and indeterminate temperament of a newly born child the atmospheric impressions and diverse influences which, in the entire planetary system, are consequent at a given moment upon such or such particular aspect of the stars. Nothing is indifferent in nature. A stone more or a stone less upon a road may break or modify profoundly the destinies of the greatest men or even the largest empires. Still more must the position of this or that star in the sky have an influence on the child who is born, and who enters by the very fact of his birth into the universal harmony of the sidereal world. The stars are bound to one another by the attractions which hold them in equilibrium, and cause them to move with uniformity through space. From all spheres unto all spheres there stretch these indestructible networks of light, and there is no point upon any planet to which one of them is not attached. The true adept in astrology must give heed, therefore, to the precise time and place of the birth which is in question. Then, after an exact calculation of the astral influences, it remains for him to compute the chances of a state. That is to say, the advantages or hindrances which the child must one day meet with by reason of position, relatives, inherited tendencies, and hence natural proclivities, in the fulfillment of his destinies. Finally, he will have also to take into consideration human liberty and its initiative, should the child eventually come to be a true man and to isolate himself by strength of will from fatal influences and from the chain of destiny. It will be seen that we do not allow too much to astrology, but so much as we leave it is indubitable. It is the scientific and magical calculus of probabilities. Astrology is as ancient as astronomy, and indeed it is more ancient. All seers of lucid antiquity have accorded it their fullest confidence, and it is not for us to condemn and reject lightly anything which comes before us encompassed and supported by such imposing authorities.
See, now you guys understand why it's bugged me so much for so long that the intellectual, the scientific aspect of this stuff has been downplayed and removed and excised completely. It used to be an integral part of this understanding. And, you can say, well, you don't really need to have that in order to have an intuitive connection to these things. Well, this is why the accuracy of so many of these people is so poor. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I'm sorry. People want to believe that you can do astonishing things just because you exist, basically, out of pure ego. The universe is not constructed that way for a reason. Reward is commensurate with effort. I'm sorry, but all this pop culture nonsense is nonsense, and it's just obvious that it is. Luckily, we're in a position to sort of reinstate the proper office. In respect to these things, I'm surprised at this guy, to the depth of understanding and knowledge and the balance of, understanding what this is, but not falling prey to superstition or woo. Like everything I've heard him say so far, I'm 100% on board with, and that pretty much never happens, because I always find some degree of superstition that exceeds what I find, permissible. And, so far this is like 100%. I can get behind all of it.
Long and patient observations, conclusive comparisons, frequently repeated experiments must have led the old sages to their decisions, and to refute them the same labor must be undertaken from an opposite standpoint. Paracelsus was perhaps the last of the great practical astrologers. He cured diseases by talismans formed under astral influences. He distinguished upon all bodies the mark of their dominant star. There, according to him, was the true universal medicine, the absolute science of nature, lost by man's own fault and recovered only by a small number of initiates. To recognize the sign of each star upon men, animals, and plants is the true natural science of Solomon, that science which is said to be lost, but the principles of which are preserved notwithstanding, as are all other secrets in the symbolism of the Kabbalah. It will be understood readily that in order to read the stars one must know the stars themselves. Now this knowledge is obtained by the Kabbalistic domification of the sky, and by mastering the celestial planisphere, as rediscovered and explained by Gaffarel. In this planisphere, the constellations form Hebrew letters, and the mythological figures may be replaced by the symbols of the tarot. To this same planisphere Gaffarel refers the origin of patriarchal writing, and the first lineaments of primitive characters may very well have been found in the chains of starry attraction, in which case the celestial book would have served as the model of Enoch's, and the Kabbalistic alphabet would have been a synopsis of the entire sky.
Damn, y'all. I'm going to have to get a PDF of this, and I'm just going to have to read the entire thing and do commentary later, but I don't want to ruin it for everybody, so let's stop with that and find something else to do for a bit. Let me look. I got to look and see if it exists, first of all. What's the book called? Transcendental Magic Eliphas. I would imagine everything is there, but I just gotta see. Yep, there it is. Wait, by Arthur Edward Waite. No. We don't like that guy very much. Let me make sure it's not just that he wrote the foreword or something. Gotta see if this is... So he stole the title? Oh no, Eliphas Levi, Transcendental Magic. Sweet. All right, guys. Wait. Why does it say by Arthur Edward Waite? Oh, a complete translation from the French original. Do we trust Arthur Edward Waite enough? Did anyone else? No, it looks like Edward Waite is the guy. Man, that sucks that he's the only source, because he was a Christian mystic. And that means that if there were things in there that he didn't approve of, he very well may have changed them. I don't like that one little bit, but I don't think there's anything I can do about it. Yeah, the only ones I see are Edgar or the Waits guy. Huh. Let me see. Translators. I should be doing this stuff after the stream. I'm getting pretty tired anyway, so I don't know if we're gonna continue much longer. That medical procedure actually did take a lot out of me. I'm surprised how beat up I feel after the fact. Let's see. All right, guys, I don't see really many questions or subjects that you guys are asking me to weigh in on tonight. Yeah. 123. So if you do have anything for me, I am totally willing to try to play along. By the way, we are hell-bent on succeeding with our fundraising efforts, so consider supporting us in some way, shape, or form. At least hit the like button. Consider sharing or subscribing. I'm definitely starting to feel a bit drained. Quantum fields are conscious. It's so long.
Papers are in the description below. And in his book, Federico describes how a deeply personal experience led him to start investigating consciousness. Therefore, I found it interesting to start our conversation with this personal experience. Of course, after that, we go into the theory itself. In the chapter marks below, you can see the topics we discussed. Now, without further ado, here is Silicon hero and consciousness pioneer Federico Fagin. Federico, can you tell us about a pivotal moment in your life, namely the experience you had at Lake Tahoe, do I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah.
During your Christmas holidays of 1990.
Yeah, I wasn't happy, and I had reached everything that the world says that if you do all this stuff, you should be happy. And I wasn't. I realized that I was faking being happy because I needed to, because I was running a company. I had to be enthusiastic and everything else, but I was dying inside. So what's going on? What's wrong with this picture? And so consciousness then was, became center stage in my life, understanding that this consciousness somehow was also connected with feeling, desperate inside. So what's going on? So I wanted to understand what consciousness is. So that's when, and I wanted to understand it for my own sake, for not to do something about it, not to monetize, not to make a new technology, because before it was all about, doing something, and now all of a sudden I turn my attention inside because of the suffering. And it was in this climate that I had this extraordinary experience of consciousness. Now I can go to this Tahoe night, in 1990 during the Christmas holidays. We had a home up in Tahoe, which is Lake Tahoe is a beautiful lake, 2,500 meters. And there are mountains, and skiing is great. And so, one night I woke up midnight, I was thirsty, went to get a glass of water, and went back to bed, and was just waiting for, go back to sleep, thinking nothing. And all of a sudden, out of the chest, just energy was coming out of my chest, but it was love. And it was love that was never felt before. It was love that was coming from me. How can love come from me? I mean, it was unthinkable that love could come from me. And it was 10,000 times more powerful than any love that I felt before. I mean, in fact, I never felt that love. because it was unconditional love. Now I have a name for it. It was love, period. Yes, it was coming from me, but it was love. And it was light. It was a white light scintillating. It was, like sparkles, and it was coming out. And then it explodes and it's everywhere. But it's everywhere, but my consciousness is there too. So not only my consciousness is within me, but it's also outside of me.
That's something I actually experienced on ayahuasca a while back. Not exactly the same, but I had left my partner and my son at the vegan community we were staying at. We weren't vegan. They made us be vegan while we were staying there, but someone just invited us to come and said, you should check out this community. So we went for a few weeks while we were waiting to take possession of a retreat center that recently burned down. And so there was a guy there that I didn't really trust completely. And I got kind of paranoid about him once the medicine started working and feeling bad for leaving them there. There was no real direct or implied threat, but still, that's what I was thinking. And at one point, the medicine put these big block letters up that said, Nagwal is dead and it's your fault, and I was like, what? And, I was thinking this guy killed them or whatever. So, when this happened, I was kind of weary. I had enough training at this point to know not to just believe it just because it's there, but the medicine had never lied to me before. So I was kind of like, on the fence about what to think about this, because every message I'd ever received had always turned out to be true. So I noticed that there was a sort of tube, and the tube went like 100 feet away out in the jungle, basically. And I was up in this built building up on stilts, kind of, not stilts, but you know what I mean. And I noticed that the fear was in this bag that was at the end of this, almost like an IV thing. And I understood that the message was how detached I was from my emotions, right? But the thing that I'm trying to convey here is that I could feel the fear, but where it was, like almost as if it was just as intense as if it was in me, but it was 100 yards away, and I could feel it there as if it was part of my body that had extended way over there. And then the medicine told me once I got the point, like, by the way, I'm sorry I had to put you through that, but I needed to make this point, and it's not true, So, yeah, just kind of interesting.
And all of a sudden I realized I am that. So I am the observer and the observed simultaneously. But I retain my point of view. I retain my identity. I was still the same kid of 5 years old or 3 years old kid that I was then, and that I am now. And so that identity, the only thing of me that remained was that point of view. And then I realized, oh my God, this stuff is the stuff of which everything is made. Everything comes from this stuff. And my body was hard, it was vibrating, like the cells of my body were resonating with this thing. Of course, the emotion, the feelings was love, joy, and peace. Because this stuff felt like, that's me. I'm at home. This is me. So I'm finally home. This is this is home. Mm-hmm. But so it was all mixed up. So you could not separate this stuff. Love, joy, and peace. And then the mind was aligned, saying this is the stuff of everything is made. So I'm everything, but also the observer of everything. So I'm a point of view of one with which one knows itself. And now is the centerpiece of this new theory of consciousness that we may talk later about.
Yeah, beautiful.
I was a physicalist. I thought basically, materialist because I study physics, and everybody knows the consciousness comes from matter, perhaps. We don't know how, but has to come from matter. What else can it come from? So, that was the mindset that I was. So, all of a sudden, how can, no, this is before matter somehow, so this must be the beginning of it. So, that changed it, and that started me in a completely different, I went orthogonal in terms of my personal development and thinking while I was running synaptics, so that was fine, but I spent from that point on 30 to 40% of my time trying to understand what happened. The inner. Science is about the outer world, but meaning, experience, consciousness, free will is about the inner world. And right now they're separate. There is the spiritual people that think that this exists, but the scientists say that doesn't mean. These guys look at those guys say matter doesn't care, So there is this separation now between science and spirituality. This way of thinking brings them together. They integrate them. Don't just oppose them. They integrate. They become one. They become one. So how do we start? So if we want to start like a new theory, I start with a postulate, because you had to, because you can never start with something that is true because you have shown to be true. You have to start with postulates. Even in math, you start with postulates that are taken to be true, and they have to be self-evident.
Yeah, it's your ground assumption.
Ground assumption, but that ground assumption has to be self-evident. The ground assumption of quantum physics, they are so self-evident that you have to study 10 years before you say, oh yeah, they are evident, not self-evident, they are evident after 10 years. So they don't pass the test of self-evidence to me. Okay, now I'm going to tell you a postulate that is self-evident. One, the totality of what exists, has three properties. Dynamic. Dynamic means it's never the same instant after instant. Is holistic, means it's not made of separable parts. And so far, I have described the universe described by quantum physics. As all these three, is all there exists, dynamic, holistic. I add one more thing, one more quality. One wants to know itself. One wants to know itself. Now, this comes from perennial philosophy. Know thyself was in the Delphi, temple. It was part of the Greek, some of the Greek philosophers. But the Vedas were saying the same thing. All the basic experiences of the people that went deeper into the understanding of reality come to the same general conclusion that there is one that has those properties, and they want to know itself. If I look within myself, what do I want to know when I was suffering? Who am I? Why am I here? Why am I suffering? What does it mean? Yeah, I want to know myself. So we all want to know ourselves. We all deep down, then we forget about it because we can do nothing about it. So we try to solve the problem by, going outside ourselves, and then we lose ourselves, like I did. And then, so if we start there, is it self-evident? It is self-evident to me, and if you think a little bit, it's self-evident to you. That is what you want, okay? So wanting means free will. Because if you are a machine, what do you want as a machine? The next state of the machine is already defined by the algorithm. What do you want? It doesn't make any sense. I don't want anything. But the question doesn't even make, there are no questions to a machine. There are only answers to a machine. So, and to know itself, one must be conscious. Because consciousness is what allows one to know itself. So I have defined free will and consciousness. And why are those self-evident? Because you are conscious and you have free will, and I'm conscious and I have free will.
Well, I'm not sure what this has to do with quantum fields being conscious. Maybe we'd have to watch the entire hour and 19 minutes, and I don't think I have time for that right now, although I am curious. Looks like he gets into like some more technical stuff, but I feel like there's some logical fallacies there, you know, like we have the appearance of free will, but we're not absolutely convinced that we have free will because, you know, and if we do, then it's very limited. I like what Michael Levin said about this recently, that, you know, we are like 80 or 90% automatic processes, but we sort of accrue chaos. And eventually that sort of aggregates into a level of freedom. And if we continue to compound our interest and we make also an effort to expand the or I guess to bring the percentage of conscious and automatic behaviors into better homeostasis, then we accrue more free will, and eventually may be able to liberate ourselves from the like chain of deterministic, mechanistic causation, and achieve some degree of liberation. You know, and unfortunately for us, a lot of that. Most of the automatic stuff that comes from our subconscious, well, not most, I guess it depends on your upbringing, but a lot of it is often trauma-based, and so we have these self-destructive underpinnings that not only do they interfere with our free will, but they often go against our conscious will, therefore pushing those moments of free will into the negative, right? So as long as we are determined by these automata, we could actually have a negative free will. If our actual free will is only, say, 8%, 3%, if we undo 20% of our conscious will, then we're actually, not only are we not having free will, we have negative free will. And I think in the case of a lot of people, certainly myself for a lot of years, that's the case. Crowley said a long time ago that most people undo everything they do. And this is one of the great secrets of initiatory freedom, that we have to realize in order to change this. But we have the influence of natural law kind of compelling us to do this, because everything has an equal and opposite reaction, and everything contains this contradiction, and all systems are tending towards homeostasis and all of these things. So there's actually all sorts of reasons that are, the cogs in the machine kind of reasons that we tend to do this to ourselves, this sort of being trapped in hell, that under the jurisdiction of natural law, Helios, the sun, that we have to continue this process of individuation and shining the light in those places that we are unable or unwilling to look, in order to inculcate greater light into the recesses, the what do you call it, the infernal regions of our being, to free us from this mind-forged hell that so often we find ourselves inhabiting. It's not enough just to become more conscious if you have self-sabotaging and self-destructive patterns, because then, and maybe that's what drives a lot of us. That's why so many initiates are so damaged. that you have to become far more awake than just balanced, because if you have these negative inclinations, then you're going to have to do more than just balance the equation. You're going to have to compensate for the like retroactive influence of your traumas. It's all doable though, and it's all necessary, and it's all beautiful in a sense, because there is no darkness. There's no light. There's no accomplishment. There's no progress. There's no movement even that isn't fueled by some form of darkness. That's our prima materia, and I am clearly out of commission, you guys. It's been a long couple of days. So please hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron, and I'll be back tomorrow. We're having our Discord meeting for patrons tomorrow at the $10 tier and higher. It's always awesome. I've discovered that doing them during the day on the weekends is better. But we have quite the group of minds, quite the group of individuals. So it's worthwhile. And maybe tomorrow I'll do some music. I was just too exhausted. It's this operation the other day was traumatizing, honestly. So I'm going to go to bed. And thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, turn on your bell notifications. And there are options to support in the chat via all kinds of stuff and crap and junk. Also, we're still having events in March and May, and maybe the first 2 weeks of April as well. Possibly sooner if you're an individual that would like to come and see me for whatever reason you might have. Otherwise, I'll see you guys tomorrow.